Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Janine Ouderkirk and I'm the Executive Director at Shelterhouse. We are so happy to have you join us today and learn a little bit more about our mission, which is to empower survivors of domestic and sexual violence by providing refuge, hope, and healing. It's that simple. But doing the work isn't that simple. Since 1976, we have been working with survivors to make their life better, and we do that in a variety of ways, and you're going to hear about that. So many people think of Shelterhouse as a shelter, but only 20% of our clients ever live with us. So as you start to hear more today, open your mind and open your heart and hear about the journey that many people have had to make, unfortunately, through a traumatic and awful experience of domestic or sexual violence. When you understand that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will experience some kind of domestic or sexual violence in their life, you know someone who has experienced domestic violence, whether as a child or whether as the home they're growing up or as an adult, or they've experienced sexual assault. So we really appreciate the support that you are giving today and taking the time to hear these stories, to learn about our services. It's really important to understand the services from that very first phone call right through helping someone to go on their journey and how we walk beside them. Shelterhouse doesn't have all the answers. Shelterhouse has some information that we can share, and each survivor makes their own choices and knows what's best for their life. They've lived their experience, we haven't. And it's important to understand that our people are our programs here. Without our staff, without our employees, we would be just a building, and that wouldn't help people at all. It would give them a roof over their head, but to be able to get the information, the education, the support, and the sense of community that they need to heal from the trauma, that happens because of the people who work here. It's my privilege to come to work every day and to work with the dedicated people who hear the stories, the people who share the information that they have to help someone's life become better. We serve all people, and I think that that's an important piece for people to understand, is that in our new building, which you're going to have the privilege, if you stick around to the end, to get some peeks at, in our new building, we respect the dignity of the individual. And this state-of-the-art new facility is only available to the survivors because of our community's generosity. And you are an amazing community. I have the privilege of going to statewide meetings, and when I'm there, sometimes I just close my eyes and take a deep breath and say, thank you, Midland and Gladwin, because our community truly cares. When I hear some of the struggles that other agencies like ours have across the state about being able to meet the needs, I feel very blessed, and I thank you, each and every one of you, for taking the time to support Shelterhouse. You're going to hear from Rob Vallentine. Rob Vallentine, retired president of the Dow Company Foundation and a mental health advocate, is on a mission to ignite his personal passion to find purpose and make a positive impact on the world. Over the last several years, Rob has become a community advocate focusing on breaking the stigma of mental health by sharing his own story of hope, healing, and growth with thousands of people. Rob currently serves on the National Advisory Board for the University of Michigan Depression Center, the National Advisory Council for the National Network of Depression Centers, and the Great Lakes Bay Regional Alliance Board of Directors, and is a community director for the Chemical Bank. While his work and community service have enabled progress and lasting improvement, he is most proud of his roles as father to his 4 children and partner to his wife, Nancy. Please, I want you to take and listen with your heart as Rob speaks now, and truly walk with him on his journey as he tells his story of hope and healing. Rob?
Hi, I'm Rob Vallentine, and I'm a community advocate for mental health. I was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, and it is a privilege to be here to tell you my story. From the outside, a lot of people thought my life was perfect. which let me tell you, it wasn't. My life was impacted as a kid, and I really never acknowledged it to anyone. I even gave a speech when I was in 7th grade. The speech opened by saying Jimmy doesn't cry out loud anymore. Tears roll down his cheeks, but he doesn't make any noise. After years of abuse, he has learned to avoid getting his face smothered by a father who doesn't like to hear him cry. Child abuse is an act of violence in our society that needs not to be ignored. See, I gave that speech and no one around me knew that the actual Jimmy was me. My teachers didn't notice, my family didn't notice, my friends didn't notice, and so I continued to keep the secret throughout my life. You know, there is really a lot of stigma in the world today around mental health. When it comes to childhood sexual abuse, it's a topic that I find is really not talked about very much at all, and especially for male survivors. You know, for female survivors, it's 1 in 3 women have been sexually assaulted in their life, and for men or for boys, it's 1 in 6. I had an opportunity in 2010 going to Ohio to a male survivor weekend of recovery. There were 25 other men there. They were construction workers, they were businessmen, they were unemployed, they were young and they were old. All of us were there because we knew that we needed to talk about a secret that we had kept most of our life. We also knew that we would heal if we were able to talk and work with other people that had similar experiences. During that weekend, I learned that it was okay to begin telling my story, and I have to tell you that it really impacted my life. After 20 years at the Dow Chemical Company, I got a new job in the community. And in 2010, I started visiting different nonprofit agencies around the Great Lakes Bay region. One of those agencies that I happened to visit was Shelterhouse. So one morning I took a drive outside the city of Midland to visit Shelterhouse. I will tell you that when I pulled into the parking lot, it was hard for me. I was breathing very heavy, I was nervous, I was actually shaking. And as I got close to the front door, I wasn't sure really that I wanted to go in. So I buzzed the buzzer on the outside, and the woman asked me my name. I hesitated, I didn't really want to tell her. But I finally said, "I'm Rob Vallentine from Dow." She buzzed the door, and I walked in. Eventually, the executive director came to the lobby and asked me to come with her, and she was going to give me a tour of Shelterhouse. We went back to the conference room, and the executive director thanked me for all the donations that Dow had made over the years. See, what's amazing about that meeting, and the reason that my legs were shaking, and the reason it was so hard to breathe, was that 12 years prior, I had been to Shelterhouse. I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and I had gone to Shelterhouse in 1998 for help. You see, I already took the long walk up the driveway. I already buzzed the buzzer waiting for the person to ask me my name. I had already sat in the lobby waiting to go back and see a counselor. I went to Shelterhouse then for a couple years and learned some amazing tools that I have to admit I still use today. Shelterhouse gave me an amazing gift of freedom to be able to begin to share my story, to begin to share the pain, to begin to talk about the things that I really was not talking to anybody in my life about. You know, I've learned in my life that when you have secrets, we're lonely because we spend time with those secrets. Where when we let those secrets out, there's more room for love, there's more room for joy, there's more room for peace. I had the privilege in 2018 of being asked to be the graduation speaker at Saginaw Valley State University. So I talked about purpose in my career, I talked about purpose as we volunteer in a community, and then I talked about purpose in hardships. I gave the statistic that 40% of Americans have experienced physical, sexual, or emotional abuse, and I'm a statistic. It was important for me that day to share that out of struggles, there's a pathway to peace. After the graduation, a couple weeks later, an email came into Dow. And one of the mothers that was attending the graduation said that her 15-year-old daughter was in the audience. And her 15-year-old daughter's response after hearing my graduation speech was, she struggles with depression, but she knows after hearing my speech, she's going to be okay. And that was just a reminder right there that when we tell our stories, there's incredible power of hope, healing, and growth. I want to thank Shelterhouse. I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart for all of the things that they helped me with in my own personal life. I'd like to thank all the donors. I'd like to thank all the volunteers. I'd like to thank all the other clients who have utilized the services at Shelterhouse. I think it's really important for the community to invest in nonprofit organizations like Shelterhouse. There's a sign outside the former Shelterhouse building that lists all the different donors. As I read the donor list recently, I realized that one of the donors to their original building was the Dow Chemical Company Foundation. What I've realized that if I had not gotten the help and support back in 1998, if the company that I worked for had not supported them, those services may not have been there for me. Little did I realize some 20 some odd years later that I would actually end up leading that foundation that donated to that former Shelterhouse building. And I'm proud to say that they also donated to this new facility. I know that there are new beginnings, and I've had many new beginnings as a result of Shelterhouse. And I know with their new building, there are going to be so many new beginnings, just like I experienced back in 1998. So thank you all for being here today and listening to my story. I really hope that my story can ignite a passion among others, that they're willing to reach out and ask for help.
Thank you, Rob, for sharing your story. I know that everyone listening was moved and understands now how someone can heal from the trauma of such a horrific experience, and I really thank you for sharing your story. I'd like now to introduce Robin Greiner, who is our Director of Housing and Crisis Services. So Robin, you're on.
Thank you, Janine. It is with great pleasure that I get to speak with each of you for the next few minutes about the services that Shelterhouse provides for domestic and sexual violence survivors. We provide these services to individuals regardless of age, gender, race, sexual orientation, income, or ability level. All of our services are free and all are confidential. Shelterhouse strives daily to provide refuge, hope, and healing. When I say the word refuge, other words like safety and protection and security come to mind. And for many people in Midland and Gladwin County, Shelterhouse has been just that, a place of refuge. About 6 years ago, a dream for a new building began to take form. Being over capacity in our shelter the vast majority of the time made us keenly aware of the importance of creating a space where individuals could reside in a trauma-informed environment while caring for themselves and their families. While at the same time, the need for our non-residential services were also growing, which increased our staffing, which just had us busting at the seams in our old building. So a team of staff and board members began to canvass the state of Michigan, listening, observing, and learning about buildings that can help us do the important work that we do. At the end of this virtual luncheon, you will be invited to tour our new facility, and I hope you love it as much as we do. But I need to tell you, while this building is absolutely phenomenal, it pales in comparison to the work that is being done every day here by the survivors that enter and exit our doors, and the amazing staff that work here to provide a place of refuge. Refuge can take many forms, as there is many complex factors shaping a survivor's willing or ability to seek help, and we count it a privilege to be a part of their journey. Our staff engage in a variety of activities depending on the needs of the individual survivors and their families. One form of refuge might be having an advocate or a therapist that takes the time to listen. I mean, really listen to the wants, needs, and wishes of our survivors. Another form of refuge might be to physically reside in one of our 15 self-contained suites that we sometimes call mini apartments or efficiency apartments. As you will see in the virtual tour, each unit contains a private bathroom, cooking area, bedroom, and living space. Those staying with us will no longer have to navigate their journey while sharing a bathroom or a bedroom or even a kitchen area with strangers. This is a true physical place of refuge. Sometimes we're asked, how does one engage in services with Shelterhouse? And it's simple. We have a helpline, and this helpline exists 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and is answered by a trained individual that can quickly connect the caller to our services. Through this helpline, the vast majority of calls are from survivors themselves requesting advocacy, shelter, or counseling. However, we do receive calls from law enforcement, 911, community partners, and local hospitals as well. As many of you might be aware, the rate of crime during our nation's stay-at-home orders went on a decrease, but unfortunately the rate of domestic violence did not experience that same decline. Shelterhouse became keenly aware that victims of intimate partner violence were unable to reach out by phone because it was unsafe to do so. And in response, Shelterhouse is currently working on and hoping to announce very soon a platform for individuals to reach us through a secure chat or text platform. Something we are very determined to have in place to better serve our survivors and to better serve our community. Whether one physically stays in Shelterhouse or not, Shelterhouse staff act as hope agents as we understand how trauma has impacted the health and the behavior of our clients. We strive to promote emotional safety in every aspect of our work, and we take time to prioritize opportunities for survivors to regain control over their own lives, while simultaneously validating and strengthening survivors' coping strategies. Shelterhouse staff keeps the survivor at the center of our work by working in tandem with our clients to reach their goals. Our bachelor's and master's level staff provide services from a trauma-informed approach which seeks to support and recognize the history of the survivor's trauma, and we counter its consequences in order to assist in the healing process. The healing process is different for every survivor. There is no one way to heal. And the wonderful thing about Shelterhouse is that we are here for the duration of that healing process. Just recently, we were contacted by survivors that were in our shelter at one time. One was seeking assistance with applying for scholarships. She had just been accepted into a master's level program and had remembered that while in shelter some time ago that we had shared if she was ever going to further her education that we could assist her in connecting with scholarships that are intended for survivors of domestic violence, and she reached out to us. Another survivor also reached out to us just recently that had received services some time ago because she had been displaced due to the flood. She knew Shelterhouse would be able to connect her to the resources that she needed. As we have discussed how Shelterhouse provides refuge, hope, and healing in our daily work, I'd like to kind of describe our comprehensive work that we do on a daily basis. Yes, we have a shelter. Many people, when they are thinking about Shelterhouse, they automatically think of our shelter, and rightfully so. It's a big component of what we do. We provide intensive services for those in shelter, helping them find income, transportation, health care, and of course, safe and secure housing. And this is done in a very comprehensive way. Many people who are been in our shelter will also continue to receive supportive services out in the community, whether that is within one of our 11 permanent supportive housing units in Midland and Gladwin County, or if it's scattered throughout the community. We will have advocates that will go to their home and continue to provide support right there in their home. Another service that we provide is therapy. I've mentioned that a couple times as a therapist or a counselor. And though the therapist can engage with victims and survivors of domestic and sexual assault and their families, we often have engaged with parents when a child has sustained an assault, a sexual assault, and we will work with not just the child themselves, but with the family to begin that healing process and complete that healing process. Another program that we have is our AIR program, which stands for Advocacy Initiated Response. This is when the police, the law enforcement, will call our helpline directly, and they will let us know that an arrest has been made in a domestic violence case. These referrals come from law enforcement in Midland and Gladwin County, and our advocates then contact the victim and discuss the legal process, discuss support that we can provide, and provide the support right there over the phone right then. In closing, I want to take a moment to recognize our volunteers. We here at Shelterhouse realize that meeting the basic needs of our survivors is the beginning of the healing process. If one doesn't have to worry about food and toiletries or even that coveted toilet paper, they can have the energy to move forward. And our valuable volunteers keep us organizing and functioning at a level that we can provide these services to our clients so that they can begin to move forward.
My name is Vicki Wakeman, and I'm the Director of Client and Community Advocacy here at Shelterhouse. Our vision is an engaged community that cultivates and nurtures healthy relationships. So with that in mind, I would like to tell you a story. The story isn't something that's made up. This is someone's lived experience. This is someone's history. But it's also a story of how Shelterhouse comes together with community partners and collaborates. The work that we do, we cannot do alone. With that, I want to tell you about someone named Allison. One night about 2 o'clock in the morning, one of our crisis advocates received a call from Midland City Police. And the police officer on the other end was saying that he had just left the scene where there had been an arrest. Allison's windows were open. It was the beginning of summer, and her neighbors heard yelling and screaming, so they called the police out of concern. The law enforcement officer responded, and her partner was arrested. However, when Midland City Police, or when Midland County Sheriff, or when Gladwin City Police, or our Gladwin law enforcement partners, when they leave the scene, it doesn't just end there. Our law enforcement partners call and let Shelterhouse know what's just happened. It allows us to reach out to the person in that moment. So after our crisis advocate hung up with law enforcement, she was able to reach out and talk to Allison. As you can probably guess, Allison was scared. She was sad. There was a lot of different feelings that she was experiencing at that time. And our crisis advocate was able to reach out to her to figure out what her immediate needs were, what next steps, what questions Allison had, and also just to listen. The next business day, our Blueprint for Safety coordinator reached out to her. Our Blueprint coordinator was able to have a lengthy conversation to talk about the on-scene lethality questions, the Blueprint for Safety questions that Allison was asked that night. She was able to ask, what do you need? What questions do you have? What can we do to help you? Allison, at that point, wasn't really sure. In a large part of the work that we do, it's not our role to tell someone what to do. Our role is to empower them, to walk beside them. Our role is to help them figure it out. And so through that conversation, our Blueprint for Safety coordinator was able to help Allison figure out that she had some questions for the prosecutor, that she had some concerns about where she was going to send her kids for daycare, because her partner had been not only the provider, but also when she was at work, he was taking care of the children. So our Blueprint for Safety coordinator was able to reach out to other community partners and talk with them about what Allison's needs were and what Allison wanted to do. She was able to walk side by side with Allison through her journey through the court system. But throughout that journey, she also was able to keep in touch. A few days after her partner was arrested, Allison reached out to our Blueprint for Safety coordinator and said, hey, I'm getting scared. Even though he's in jail right now, his family's calling me. I'm not sure what to do. So with that, our Blueprint for Safety coordinator reached out to our shelter advocates and was able to help Allison and her children come into shelter safely. Our shelter isn't just a night where someone has a roof over their head. These are nights of safety. So when Allison and her kids got here, her kids talked about how it's the first time in a long time that they felt safe, that they slept through the night, that they could be comfortable. Our shelter advocates came in and worked with Allison, again, side by side with that empowerment idea in mind. They were able to help Allison get her children counseling with our master's level therapists. They were able to help her son, who had a little bit of a learning disability, receive tutoring through the Legacy Center. Allison and her family were able to utilize food. As Robin mentioned earlier, we have a partnership with Hidden Harvest. And so Allison and her family were able to shop with dignity for food that they want and cook in their own apartments and cook in their own facilities. So Allison and her family really didn't go through this journey alone. A little bit after Allison was here, her daughter disclosed that her daughter had been sexually assaulted. So that brought Allison into another side of our world. We also have a SANE program, and the SANE program is a sexual assault nurse examiner program. This means that we have specially trained medical providers whose job it is to assess someone after they've been sexually assaulted. Their job isn't to go in and collect evidence, although they are specially trained in forensic nursing, so that is absolutely a byproduct and a very well-trained byproduct of the work that they do. But they were able to go and talk with Allison about healthcare concerns. Her daughter was able to have a SANE exam done in a trauma-informed way. Oftentimes, when I've been on SANE exams in the past, I have heard kids laughing and giggling. I had one child one time who came back and said, "Hey mom, can my cousin, so-and-so, come back with us tomorrow? This was so much fun." So our SANE exams aren't that big scary thing that a lot of people think they are, and Allison's family was able to experience that. We were able to partner with Mid-Michigan Health because that's where our SANE exam room is. So Allison and her family received a variety of services. They didn't just receive a night of safety. They were able to experience all that our community has to offer. None of this we could do alone. We cannot, and I can't say this enough, but we at Shelterhouse cannot do any of this without the amazing communities of Midland and Gladwin that we are able to work with every day. We work with a wide variety of volunteer groups, of other nonprofits, and we don't just coordinate with them, but we collaborate with them to make Midland a better place. Midland and Gladwin truly exemplify and live that vision that an engaged community cultivates and nurtures healthy relationships. Shelterhouse and our clients and the people that we serve, our goal is to not just have healthy relationships for their intimate partners or within their families, but we are also able to utilize and model and experience the amazing healthy relationships and collaborative experiences that we have as a community. Again, I can't say this enough, we cannot do the work that we do alone. In 2015, switching gears a bit, but in 2015, Midland County was awarded a grant from the Office of Violence Against Women, and it was one of 3 in the country at that time. And this grant was to implement the Blueprint for Safety. And what this did is really look at the criminal legal system and how we share information, how it's coordinated. And I mentioned that AIR program earlier, and that's how we first met Allison. But that AIR program allows us to make relationships and create stronger relationships with our community partners within the criminal legal system. We have an amazing working relationship. And again, this is one of those things that we cannot do alone. So we are very fortunate in both Midland and Gladwin to have a coordinated approach, because in 2018, OVW awarded Gladwin a similar grant. So they were able to start the work of implementing the blueprint as well. Midland is continuing on, and Gladwin is in the process of implementing theirs. But what this underscores for both communities is the importance of a coordinated approach. So we don't do this in isolation. We rely so heavily on our community partners, but we are also able to collaborate and coordinate to not just keep offenders accountable, but to keep victims and their voices at the center of all of our interactions. This is something that has required a large amount of relationship building. It requires a lot of trust and collaboration and a lot of vulnerability as well, because we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, hey, how can we do better? What can we do to have healthy relationships with one another, but what can we do to have healthy relationships for the people that we work with every day? I am very, very proud to say that we in Midland and Gladwin counties are grateful for the relationships that we have with our community partners. We cannot do this alone, just like we can't do this without you. So thank you for spending some time here. And I also, before I let you go, I want to give you a little bit of a sneak preview. You'll see a tour at the end of this video. But I'm sitting in our new community room by the fireplace. It is beautiful and it is a wonderful environment for healing. So with that being said, I want to express my thanks to the next person that you'll get to hear from, our Midland County prosecutor, Dee Brooks. JD, take it away.
Well, thank you, Janine and Vicki, for those kind words and for all the great work that you and your staff do at Shelterhouse. I can tell you from having worked with you over the last 20 years that I can't do my job to help protect the community and seek justice in these cases without all the support and work that you do and that our staffs do together. We also need to thank Rob Vallentine for sharing his story with us. When you see and hear somebody like that speak about those circumstances, you can really see and, more importantly, feel the emotion and the scars of having lived in circumstances and situations like that. It's things that really stay with you for the rest of your life. And that's why these cases have always been a top priority and interest of mine since I began in prosecution over 30 years ago now, before I started to dye my hair gray for maturity effect. These situations, these cases, they're perpetrated by those of us in our family and at home, by the people that we trust and rely on to help make us safe, to help comfort us. And when it happens in the home, it just is that much worse. And it has potentially lifelong effects. And that's why it's so important then that we support people that are involved in these circumstances from the first instance, the first time that we find out about it and they need support services, counseling services, and just safety planning and a chance to get away from the abusive situation that they're in, which is so potentially dangerous and devastating. And that's why the work that Shelterhouse does is so important. I've been prosecuting these cases now for over 30 years. And I remember some time ago, probably about 20 years ago, I was actually on faculty at a program that was that was put on by the Prosecuting Attorneys Association for newer prosecutors to teach them about effective ways to prosecute difficult domestic violence cases, and also for expert witnesses to testify about some of the trauma and effects of domestic violence on victims and why it can be so difficult for them to be able to come to court and to accurately disclose and recount what has happened to them. And I remember the last part of the program, the last day, was a gentleman that ran a batterers program, counseling services for people that had been repetitively or repeatedly convicted of domestic violence. And he was from Ypsilanti, and he brought in these three individuals who all had, as I mentioned, several convictions for domestic violence. And they gave a panel discussion about what it was like for them to go through the system from their side and what finally started to get through to them that caused them to change their behaviors. Now, I'll note that I heard that at least one of these people, I believe, was arrested again for domestic violence afterwards. So he still had some difficulties with the system. But it was a very interesting discussion. And the one thing I remember more than anything else is he talked about how abusers that are basing their relationships on power and control, they are always looking for that weak link. It starts with their victim. They exercise power and control over them to try to keep them silent, quiet, to make them ashamed of what's happened to them, to make them feel responsible, and to keep them from disclosing and reporting the abuse. And then when it happens enough that it gets disclosed or somehow it gets reported to somebody and law enforcement gets involved, then they start working with the police and they explain how they're just trying to help out their partner. Their partner has a lot of emotional difficulties and substance abuse issues, and they act like they're really the hero, just trying to control their partner's behavior. And when they can't manipulate law enforcement, then they go to work on the prosecutors, convincing them that, again, it's a one-time situation, it wasn't really their fault or all their fault, and they promise that they'll behave and be good in the future. And if that doesn't work and they end up in the court system and they end up being convicted and held accountable, then they work on the judges and the probation officers. And I just really found that discussion interesting. And so I took that back to Midland County and I looked at what we have here with the Shelterhouse. We have, I think, excellent police agencies that take these matters very seriously. We had our office, which considered them top priority. We had courts and probation offices that all took this serious. But what I came to realize is that we can have all these individual groups that are all very strong on their own, but unless they're connected, unless those links are locked together in a solid and unbreaking fashion, then the system still fails people. It still breaks apart. So it's not only having all these agencies strong, it's those connections, it's those links together. And so we really have emphasized that relationship with Shelterhouse the last 20 years. And in fact, it was in 2000 that Bernie Lasher, the then executive director of Shelterhouse, and myself went to a program up in Traverse City for a few days, and we eventually co-founded the Midland County Domestic and Sexual Violence Coordinating Council, which was bringing all the partners together, Shelterhouse and the police, our office, the courts. We brought in the county clerk, we brought in doctors, mental health professionals, all the service agencies that are involved in these circumstances and dealing with these cases. And we found that by communicating and working together, we could build that much of a stronger system. And that's really been evolving over the last 20 years. We've brought in other groups, obviously, such as the SANE, the Sexual Assault Nurses Examiners Program. We developed the Child Advocacy Center for interview of children involved in abuse and neglect circumstances. And really working with these agencies, we were able to form this seamless, this strong bond. I can tell you that without our strong relationship with Shelterhouse, without them immediately providing safety assurances to victims, without them working with them, finding them a place to live, the immediate needs that they need to address for their own safety and for their children, without them communicating and working and helping support the victims through the system. They are very much afraid of prosecutor's office. They haven't always necessarily had good relationships with the police or felt that prosecutors in the courts fully supported them in the past. And so it becomes so important for the Shelterhouse to work with these people, to reassure them that, you know what, we're all on the same side. And that was one of the things that it took me a few minutes some time ago to realize, is that everybody kind of had their different focus, from Shelterhouse and the police and the prosecutors and the courts. But if you asked any of us what we were after, it was the same thing. It was victim safety. It was holding batterers accountable, trying to seek justice and justice for the victim. But ultimately, what we wanted to do was keep those victims safe. And so that's where we found that by working together, and we work every day with Shelterhouse. We can't find somebody, a victim or somebody involved in a case, we contact Shelterhouse. They, of course, have privacy and confidentiality concerns that they have to deal with, but they are always supportive about getting in contact with victims, they'll even come to our office and meet with us and meet with the victims. They go to court, they explain the process. From somebody, it's so important to have somebody from their side, somebody that they know is there looking after their interests and who can help convince them that that's really what we're trying to do. That's really what it's about. And it's through that work together and that support that we are able to handle these cases so much more effectively and so much more efficiently. And I believe that we truly do save lives. We still have far too much domestic violence. The recent issues in the community have shown that these situations still are occurring on a regular basis. But we are so much better prepared to address them through our partnership and our working relationship with Shelterhouse and the other service agencies. It really is about partnerships. And that includes the whole community. We all know that Shelterhouse would not exist in this community, wouldn't be in this beautiful new home that I'm very anxious to see. We were going to go over for a tour of the shelter the week after the governor put the stay-at-home orders in place, and so I've never seen the inside of the facility, and I'm looking forward to the tour. But none of that would have ever happened without the community partnerships and the community supports. And that's why it's so important to participate in this program today, and again, to help support the work that Shelterhouse does. Because again, without that community partnership and that community support, Shelterhouse wouldn't exist. Without Shelterhouse, I can't do my job nearly as effective, and we're going to have a situation where domestic violence is left untreated, where it's left unprosecuted and unpunished. And I don't think any of us, and I know that none of us want that. So please enjoy the tour. Please partner and support Shelterhouse all that you can. We have this tremendous community that collaborates and works together, and all the support that Shelterhouse has been given to work together with the rest of us is truly a great thing. I urge you to continue that support, and I thank you very much for allowing me a few minutes to participate in today's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. I really appreciate your sharing how our community comes together. And thank you, JD. I know that you have made a difference in our community. I know from talking with you how the rates of domestic violence charges and holding people accountable has really improved since you've been elected to office. So thank you so much for sharing how we work together. I want to take a breath now, and I want everyone to think about all that you've heard about our mission and the work we do. And knowing that we had to, because of COVID-19, cancel our Chefs for Shelterhouse this year, we are needing to replace those funds. And so I am asking each of you to, if you're able, to reach into your wallet and share your treasure with us. There's always talk about time, talent, and treasure, and we need all three. We couldn't do what we do without volunteers. But this is about having the general funding dollars to make sure that our important work can continue to happen. The wonderful part is if you do that donation today, every dollar that we raise is going to be matched by the Herbert H. and Grace A. Dow Foundation for $3. So every dollar you give us, we get $3 more. And so that your investment in the work that we do can go that much farther. And I really thank you in advance for taking the time to go on our website and sign in and make that donation. It is going to make a difference in lives of your neighbors, your friends, possibly your family. The people in our community need your support, and I'm making a heartfelt plea for you to do that today. Thank you in advance, and I truly, we honor your money and we use it wisely to help survivors. Thank you. Now, if you have an extra few minutes, we'd like to give you a sneak peek of the new Shelterhouse. Our location's at 2500 Waldo Avenue, and hopefully once we're able to open our doors and we can have people come and visit us, you can actually come on site. But in the meantime, you're going to get a sneak peek. Now I'm going to tell you that we're not all the way moved in. So some of the stuff you're going to see, there's not pictures on the walls, they're not all the way, the furniture isn't all there, but we wanted you to have a virtual tour of the new Shelterhouse. The model that we have now is unique and wonderful. We did a lot of research over the years while we were planning this, and it is not community living. It is people having the dignity of having their family intact in their own suite. It is going to be one of those things that you are going to be glad you took the extra 15 minutes and watched this tour. So enjoy the tour, and Would love to hear your comments on Facebook or wherever after you've seen the tour. Thank you so much again for taking the time with us today.
Hi, my name is Janine Ouderkirk and I'm the Executive Director here at Shelterhouse. Today we're going to have a tour of our new facility here at 2500 Waldo Avenue, Midland, Michigan. Welcome to the tour. As you come in, you will see that we very carefully thought about welcoming you to our facility. If you are a community partner, you will come to this door and greeted by the same receptionist who would greet you if you were a client and come in this door. We want to secure privacy and confidentiality for people who are coming to seek services from us. Welcome to my office. As you can see, it's a typical office where we can do administrative work. I'll be able to have meetings in here and have community partners come in and do some planning and all kinds of stuff. So real excited to welcome you to my office. Welcome to our volunteer huddle room. Now if you decide you want to come and volunteer for Shelterhouse and do spreadsheets or some kind of administrative volunteering and some projects for us, this would be the room that we have set aside for volunteers to be able to have a nice, comfortable workplace. Very excited to welcome our volunteers. And thank you in advance for volunteering. On this tour, I wanted to give you an idea of what our administrative offices will look like once we have furniture. But this is one where the furniture is here and our finance director has moved in and things are very warm and welcoming. So wanted to give you a peek at what that might look like for all of our administrative offices. We wanted to show you what a typical therapy office will look like so that a client can come in and meet and be warm, comfortable while they're having their therapy session. Just an FYI, we also have one therapy dog here at Shelterhouse, and this happens to be his owner's office. Welcome to our Client Services Coordinator's office. When someone calls Shelterhouse, they need to reach out and they need help. Sometimes they don't know what that help is. Sometimes it might be advocacy, sometimes it may be therapy or counseling. And so our Client Services Coordinator helps them, walks beside them, tells them the options that they have, what they might do to make a difference in their life. And that happens here in this office. Welcome to our gathering room. When we were dreaming about this new facility, we wanted a place for families to gather for potlucks, for groups, for support groups, for all kinds of things. We even had one person who wants to have cooking classes in here. So there's going to be a lot of things happen in this room that are going to be like magic. We're very excited for this room to be opened up and to have services begin. This room is really designed as the kitchen. So we have, the stove, the dishwasher, the oven, everything in here to make it so that it can be used in a gathering room area. This is not where the families come for their daily meals. This is a purposeful room. As we walk towards this way, you can see that we have this beautiful fireplace. And it, again, is something that we can have a support group here, we can have meetings in here. You will see that it is just designed, again, I used the word earlier, for purposeful activities. As you can see, this room was very well laid out for people to come together to have the resources and support that they need as they heal from the trauma that they've experienced. It's really important that everyone understand that you can't do this alone. You need that community of support. And this gathering room brings people together to heal. Welcome to our little store. We haven't come up with a better name for it, but for right now, we're calling it our little store. We have a resale shop over in the old Kmart Plaza where our clients can shop for free, but sometimes they have emerging needs. So this store is for all of our clients, whether they are residential clients, they live in a shelter, or whether they're here coming to have therapy, advocacy, or other services. They're going to be able to come into this little store and get their needs for their family. We are really excited, whether it is stuff out of the freezer, the refrigerator, whether it is blankets, whether it is personal care items, or coats for your children. We are really excited to be able to offer this to our clients where they can come in, shop with dignity, and get the things that they need for their families. So excited to share this with you. Welcome to our community room. This room is very unique. When the wall is open, it will hold about 75 people. And you'll see this side right now is empty. So we can have clients to come in here and have yoga, or we can have community partners come in and do, when they register and sign up, they can come in and do things that they need to do. We have a separate entrance so that the shelter stays secure. So if people from the community come to use this room, they will not be interacting or have access to our clients. So we're very excited to be able to have this training room, to have this available for our community to use and for us to use, for our clients, for groups, for trainings, for whatever it is that we might need. We're very excited to share this community room with you. This is the other side of the community room where it's set up to have a training. You'll see that the presenter can be up front where the television is, or we have enough room for participants. And as I said, if the wall is open, this room will hold about 75 people. We're so excited, as I said, to share this room with the community. A lot of education can happen, a lot of training, a lot of lives can be changed because of what is learned in this room. This room is a very important room as a survivor starts their journey to rebuild their life after trauma. It's our resource room, so clients can come in here and they have the use of the computer or printer or what they need to either do a job search, to get their resume together, to find out information that they need. And also the children can come in here and use the computers for their homework. There is security on the web so that they cannot get to the bad places that would be very harmful to them. So this room is very important. You'll see there's windows here so that if mom's in here doing her job search, kids can be next door playing and she doesn't have to worry about them and they can see her. So as we go into the children's room, you can see that we've set it up for older children. There are games, there are things for younger children as well, but primarily this would be where maybe arts and crafts might happen, where some collective activities among the children might happen. It is set up so that children can grow and have a place to be children. This is our children's play area. As you can see, it's designed for preschoolers and for school-aged children. It is designed so that they can have a fun and safe time to play, while you'll see over there is the laundromat, and over here is a unique room. When someone comes into shelter for the first time after experiencing the trauma of domestic or sexual violence, they need to tell their story to our advocate. And in order to do that, it's important that the children feel safe and that mom or dad feels safe. So in this room, mom and our advocate can be in there and she's telling her story, and the door will be shut. And the children can play here, and mom can see them and they can see mom and know that she's safe. Because this is really important at that first initial exposure to Shelterhouse to know that they are going to be safe. I can't stress enough the amount of trauma that someone comes here with, and they don't know what's going to happen. And so this gives us the opportunity to walk beside them to explain the services that Shelterhouse offers while their children can relax and play and be kids. This is our Housing and Crisis Services Director's office. Our Housing and Crisis Services Director is responsible for, from that first phone call, that crisis call that comes in, to the time when someone comes and stays in shelter. So she manages all of those activities and is responsible for making sure everything runs smoothly. And that magic happens here in this office. When someone calls and they're in crisis, this is where the phone is answered. When someone says, I've experienced the most horrific time in my life and I need help, the person sitting in this chair is the person who walks beside them, helps them figure out what it is they need, connects them to resources, and gets them in for service. So this office is very important to all of the work we do. Once someone is admitted to shelter, they have the freedom to come and go as they would in their normal life. They have to go get groceries, they have to go to their jobs, they have to take their kids to the doctor. So this is their quote-unquote lobby. So this is the door, and they have a separate parking lot that is gated, that is not open to the public, so they're able to come and go in a secure environment. So they come in here, and then they go on into the shelter through this other door. So they are protected. Once they are in this secure location, it is locked and keyed entry only. So we feel really good about keeping people safe. This is part of the shelter that we're very proud of. When we were doing our dreaming and planning, we wanted to make sure that it was pet friendly for part of the shelter. And we needed to do that because sometimes a victim will not leave their assailant because of their fear for the safety of their pet. And so we wanted to make sure that we could also keep the pets safe because they are part of the family. So in this wing, from where the carpet stops to where it goes on, is pet-friendly suites. We don't have it in yet, but as we go, if you were to go outside through these doors, we are going to have a dog run and a place for the dogs to be safe and secure and get the exercise they need to be healthy. So we tried to work that into all of our planning and all of the ways to make sure the whole family was safe. As we were planning our shelter services, we knew that we wanted to not have communal living. We wanted each family to have the dignity of having their own suite. So we are now in a family suite. You'll see they have their own table, refrigerator, dishwasher, microwave, and countertop stove. It is really important that all of the amenities that they need to function as a family are included in the suite. So they have their dishes, they have their pots and pans, and they have the ability to have their own food. That was really important to us. It also was important to know that families come in different sizes. There might be no children, there might be one child, there might be 5 or 6 children. So we wanted to build in the flexibility to be able to adapt to the size of the family. So as we walk this way into the bedroom, you can see that this bed has 3 twin beds in total, one of them being a bunk bed. Each suite has their own bathroom, including a shower and toilet and all the things that they need so that they can get ready for school in the morning, get ready for their job. They don't have to share a bathroom with another family, and that's really important. When we decided that communal living created a lot of unnecessary drama for people who had already experienced trauma in their life, we didn't want to have that repeated. And so this facility does not promote communal living except in that purposeful area in the gathering room, the family resource room, and different play areas. But as far as having family dignity and intact privacy, we built that into the suites. Again, this is another suite. This is for a single person, someone without children. We did not want communal living, even people without children, to be able to have the dignity of having their own space. So you will see here we have a microwave, we have a smaller refrigerator, there's dishes, a sofa bed, and they do have their own bathroom. This is what we call the reflection room. So someone needs some quiet time out to meditate, to reflect, to read, just have that time to themselves to take a breath. This room looks out into the woods, into the backyard. It is a place where someone can have that solitude and peace that they need while they heal on their journey after experiencing domestic or sexual violence. It's an important place, small space, but important place. So now you've gotten to see an individual suite for someone who doesn't have children, and you got to see a family flexible suite to see what our suites look like. We have 15 suites total, and I cannot show you the one suite, actually 2, that I would like to show you. They are accessible suites. So a person with a disability or someone who uses a wheelchair, we can accommodate their needs as well. So we are really, really excited to be able to serve all. Anyone who calls and asks and needs to be safe and away from their assailant can come here. We have the ability to serve. So We appreciate all of the community support that made this possible. It really does make a difference. I hope you have enjoyed your tour of Shelterhouse today. We are very excited to be able to have this opportunity to have this new facility, the state-of-the-art best practice programs here in our community. As we work to meet our mission of serving survivors of domestic and sexual violence by providing refuge, hope, and healing, we are able to do it so much better in this new facility. I want to thank you, our community, for coming together to make this possible. And thank you for taking the time to do this virtual tour. It has been my pleasure to share Shelterhouse with you. Thank you.